into the Barbie movie not just wanting to love it, but fully expecting that I would love it. I am right in the target demographic that I assumed the movie was going for. And the movie, at least as it was presented to me in like trailers and promotional materials and whatnot, is exactly my jam. I was very excited to see this movie. And so after now having seen it, my high level top of mind thought on it is I enjoyed it, but I did not like it. So to explain that, the movie, obviously the visuals, especially the visuals in Barbie Land, are all fantastic. The characters are generally pretty engaging. The plot was interesting. The jokes were very funny. And throughout the first half of the movie, it seemed to be setting up some really interesting themes. So I was very much enjoying myself. In the first half of the movie, I loved very few complaints. And most of the complaints are things like, maybe I would have played that as a low-key reveal rather than a twist. Or, why is there no my-size Princess Barbie in Barbie Land? I want a 17-foot tall Barbie towering over everyone else. But, like, maybe that's just me. So I'm going to let that one go. But yeah, very much enjoyed, loved the first half of the movie. The second half of the movie, though, the plot takes a bit of a turn, and I was still enjoying it. I was still interested to see what was going to happen. I was still laughing at all the jokes, a lot of laughter in my theater, having a good time, but there were just moments where I was on, I don't know about that, but okay, I was still with the movie. And then the movie ended, and I walked out, and my media analysis brain, which had been running in the background the whole time, it does not turn off anymore. No, it never turns off. Kind of started speaking up, like, hey, sis, I noticed some things, some issues, just a couple of problems. And so I started thinking about it, and then I talked to a friend who had also seen the movie and also, noticed a couple of problems. And within 24 hours of when I had first sat down to watch the movie, I found myself thinking, actually, I think maybe I kind of low-key hate that movie. I think it's a bad movie. I still enjoyed myself when I was watching it, but yeah, I think it's a bad movie. So for my rating recommendation, before I actually get into the whole spoiler analysis of it all, I would say if you're a person not like me, a person who can just sit and watch a movie for what it is, what it's presenting to you, if you can turn that media analysis brain off, then I would say 4.5 stars, a movie. And I fully recommend that you go see it. If you liked what you saw in the trailers, you're going to have a great time with it. And I want you to see it because I very much like this type of movie. I like the movie that this movie was presenting itself as being. So I want this movie to be very, very successful so they make more movies like this. So yeah. Highly recommend it. Go check it out. You'll have a great time. Now, if you're like me, and you do have that media analysis brain that just does not turn off, for you, 2.5 stars. Deep movie. All the good things about the movie are still there. It is a movie that is enjoyable in the way that it intends to be. But it is also a movie that very much wants to say something. It is here to say something. And there are a couple of good points sprinkled throughout, but for the most part, the messaging becomes so muddled, I'm not entirely sure what it's trying to say. So from here, I'm going to go into a full analysis of the movie. Spoilers ahead, so if you don't want that, head out now. All right, okay, moving forward. So the movie starts oddly enough, with that first trailer, the Space Odyssey parody trailer, with all the little girls in the rocky area and with their baby dolls, and then Barbie shows up and they smash it. Yeah, that's how the movie starts, which I was not expecting, and it was great. And then it goes from there into, extends it a little bit and explains that, Barbie can do anything, and therefore girls can do anything, and therefore sexism was solved forever. Amen. At least that's what the Barbies think. Yeah? You gonna make a nuisance of yourself? Okay. So this is a fantastic start to the movie. Very strong start. I love it. It's introducing, here's our opening argument, our thesis statement. Barbie is good and feminist and empowers girls. But it's such a ridiculous and overtop version of that statement. And the movie tells us, it knows that this is ridiculous and over the top. So it sets us up to know that, okay, this is going to be a discussion. This is not our thesis of the whole movie. This is just where we're getting started. Okay. So from there, it goes into the whole Barbie Land segment. And if you've seen the trailers, you know what this segment is. And that is a compliment. This is definitely a lot of creative energy and a lot of effort is on display here. And just a lot of love for Barbie. Love this segment. No complaints other than the lack of My Size Princess Barbie. Ultimately, then Barbie starts having some issues with herself. Her foot's going flat, and she's starting to have irrepressible thoughts of death, and she gets cellulite. So she has to go see Weird Barbie, which is the Barbie with the weird haircut and the marker all over her face and whatnot. Goes to see Weird Barbie, and Weird Barbie's going to help her out, and she explains that our Barbie, stereotypical Barbie, she's called, has somehow managed to form a psychic link with one of the girls playing with her Barbie doll. And that has opened a rift between Barbie Land and the real world. And it is making the way that this girl's playing with her doll more directly impact Barbie than the normal relationship between Barbies and the real world. And so Barbie is going to have to go out into the real world and find this girl and somehow solve the problem. I don't really think they explain how she's supposed to solve it, but I think it was one of those sort of, you're just going to have to figure it out when you get there kind of deals. So Barbie goes to the real world, and Ken does go with her, but we're gonna loop back to Ken. Barbie goes to the real world, gets into some shenanigans. She gets sexually harassed a lot. There's a lot of that going on. She gets leered at by dudes on the beach. She gets her ass grabbed by some guy. The cops who are processing her after she was arrested are making lewd comments to her, which is terrifying. She gets catcalled by some surprisingly trans-affirming construction workers. They catcall her, and she's gonna shut that down by confidently asserting that she does not have a vagina. And the construction workers are like, okay, that's cool. So, insert that community meme about, I can excuse sexual harassment, but I draw the line at transphobia. So I guess shame on them and good for them. It's a wash. Eventually, Barbie is able to use her psychic link with this, girl that is playing with her doll. And she gets flashes of memories of this little girl. First we see her as a little girl and she's playing with her Barbie. She's having fun. She's happy. And we see her older. She's a young teen. I think she's 14 in this movie. I could be wrong, but I feel like they said she was 14. But young teen, and we can see that she is becoming kind of in her rebellious phase, right? She's becoming a bit pricklier. And the last memory that Barbie sees is this girl getting dropped off at her school. So Barbie is able to find the school. She finds the girl, Sasha is her name, and goes up and introduces herself. And Obviously, Sasha at first does not believe that Barbie is Barbie. She thinks it's just some random woman who's being weird, but is prompted to give her opinion on the Barbie toy line, and she tears into Barbie. Sasha is so mean to Barbie. Like, she makes Barbie cry and calls her a fascist, which is maybe not the joke that made me laugh the hardest, but it is probably my favorite joke in the movie. So Sasha is making some of the feminist points that you see about Barbie, and like the unrealistic standards that she sets up for girls, and how that can in turn be disempowering for girls. And a number of other points. I don't remember. I think there's an argument about capitalism in there somewhere. But it works very well from like a character stance. You get a very strong sense of, okay, this is this girl who is, just getting to that age where she's really starting to have to confront the reality of the world and the way that our society is set up kind of against women, about how we live in a patriarchal society that kind of hates women, and is becoming more socially aware and is starting to get the language to describe these things, but at the same time is still very young and is not really capable of like understanding or making space for nuances in these discussions or the complexity of this. She has a friend who's sitting there they're like at a lunch table with her, and her friend mentions that she likes Barbie, and Sasha just gives this friend a death glare, like, no, you're not allowed to buy Barbie. Barbie is bad kind of vibe. And she's also kind of a little shit, because 14-year-olds are kind of little shit sometimes. It works very well, and it was also a really good choice to have Sasha being the one presenting this argument and being the 14-year-old who's also kind of a little shit, because, like I said, it works for the character choice, but it also is a way for the movie to introduce some of the criticism that there's going to be of this movie. Not the people whining about it hates men, blah, blah, blah. Like, you're never going to reach those people anyways. But the people who want to criticize this movie from a feminist standpoint, like, it introduces them as one side of the argument, right? It's the thesis of Barbie thinking that Barbie has empowered girls and fixed misogyny forever. And the other side is Barbie is bad, actually, and she disempowers girls by setting up unrealistic expectations for them. So that's the other side of the argument. And so it gives the movie a way of addressing that argument. And because it is from a sympathetic character, it gives us a way to say, hey, we hear you. You're making some good points, but ultimately we disagree, and here's why we disagree. And put that in the movie in a way that feels very natural. So that was a very good choice, I thought. And now we've got our thesis and antithesis set up, and we got one last thing to kind of really get this whole thing set together, and that would be Sasha's mother, Gloria. Just on a logistical standpoint to note, Gloria does work for Mattel. She's like the admin assistant for the CEO, I think, which is basically important because she eavesdrops in on a meeting between the executives, and that is how she knows that Barbie is in fact the real Barbie, and how she knows Mattel are coming after Barbie, which like is not really a plot point per se as much as it's just kind of a way to move the movie forward at times, but that's fine. More from an emotional standpoint, like the theme standpoint though, what Gloria provides is, it turns out she is actually the one that Barbie has psychically connected to, right? All those memories of the young Sasha were actually her mom, Gloria's memories of her daughter and the way their relationship has become strained recently. Because Gloria loves Barbie. Like when she first sees Barbie, like they're kind of like across the way, and Barbie's getting loaded into a car, and Gloria's like starts taking like some steps towards the car, and just watches it drive off, and there's just like this very palpable sense of awestruck wonder about her. America Ferrera, who plays Gloria, just fantastic job. And then when Barbie and Gloria actually meet and are talking for the first time, there's just so much excitement and energy between the two of them. Obviously, Gloria is a huge fan of Barbie. And now, I don't think that's literally what her and Sasha are having a strain in their relationship for. But it does kind of set up that they have this strained relationship, and they're also on opposite sides of this thesis, antithesis that we set up. So as our movie makes its philosophical point, going from thesis, antithesis to synthesis, we also have that metaphorically being represented in Gloria and Sasha, mother and daughter, finding their way back to mend their relationship. And so that gives us an emotional core to this discussion that we're having. Which in some ways is kind of a simplistic choice maybe for the movie to set up, but I think it was a really good choice. I really liked it because the underlying discussion that we're having here about the complex relationship that Barbie, like the toy line of Barbie, has with feminism is a really interesting discussion that there's a lot of different ways that you can go with that. First of all, there's just what the movie has already set up about how, Barbie being able to do all these things maybe empowers girls to feel like they can do them too, versus Barbie setting up unrealistic expectations and standards for girls, disempowering them and making them feel embarrassed and ashamed that they can't live up to those standards. Then there's also room to discuss the way that Barbie, like the very pink Barbie, can be like a real symbol of femininity that gets forced on little girls and little children who maybe are perceived as being girls at the time, and how that can build resentment and how that's not fair. Like little girls who like Barbie should be able to like Barbie, but children who don't like Barbie shouldn't be forced to like Barbie. Then there's maybe also a discussion to be had about how Barbie, the character presented to us by like the toy line and the movie line and everything that they do, is a very competent, capable woman. She has, her own goals and ambitions. She's also a very compassionate person, versus a lot of time pop culture impression of Barbie is like she's just a bimbo. Then there's also discussion that we can have about Barbie and diversity. So in particular in this movie, we have Gloria, who loves Barbie, as also a Latina woman. And I went and looked it up. And Teresa, who is Barbie's, for the first doll that is a Latina friend for Barbie, the first one was released in 1988, when America Ferrera would have been 4 years old. She was born in 1984. And we can imagine maybe Gloria is a couple years older, so maybe she's like 7 or so when this doll comes out. And you can imagine that her being a little Latina girl who loves Barbie, then finding out there is now a Barbie that is Latina like her, like maybe that would have been a very empowering, impactful moment for her that really shaped the way that she continues to feel about Barbie going forward. And there's definitely room to have this conversation about how it's not good that it took them almost 30 years to introduce this Latina doll, and just having one Latina doll is not really enough, and it definitely doesn't solve racism by any means, while still acknowledging that, hey, that this was still a moment for a little girl where she felt very validated and empowered, and that's still something that's very important. Like, I guess it's a little late for suggestions, but there's my suggestion of something good that we could have done with this topic. We do not do that. That's not the movie that we get. So, like I said, Gloria and Barbie meet, and once they meet, they're on the run from the Mattel CEOs, executives, and so Barbie suggests they can go to Barbie Land to hide. And that's the point where the plot takes a turn, and we abandon, or mostly abandon, pretty much every storyline. They get wrapped up very quickly, if at all. Like the rift, no idea. I assume it's closed, maybe. I'm not really clear. Like, it seems like there is always a passage between Barbie Land and the real world normally. Like, Alan makes a mention about how tons of Allens have escaped before, and all of NSYNC are Allens, which is fun. It was funny, but it's also kind of weird because I thought there was only one Allen, but whatever. And we have like, but yeah, so I don't know. But I assume it worked out some way or other. The psychic link, that's never explained, like how or why Barbie and Gloria had this psychic link. I mean, obviously, the fact that Gloria loves Barbie played into it, but, you know, I don't know what else was going on there. Which I don't know, I guess it's just a thing that happens sometimes. And at the end of the movie, Barbie does decide to become human. She becomes a real girl. It was a Pinocchio story all along. And so I guess that probably breaks the link. I don't know. I never talk about it again. The issue with Sasha hating Barbie. Well, when they're on their way to Barbie Land, Barbie tells her about how, yeah, in Barbie Land, Barbies are in charge of everything everywhere. And Sasha's like, oh, that's pretty cool, actually. I think I like Barbie Land. And then she seems pretty chill about it for the rest of the movie. Sasha and Gloria's strained relationship. Well, we have two bits resolving that. First, Gloria mentions some drawings that she did. So she did some drawings of irrepressible thoughts of death Barbie and cellulite Barbie, right? From the beginning. Gloria refers to them as like stupid or something, and Sasha's like, hey, they're cool and weird like you, and I wish you would be more cool and weird and not try to hide it all the time. Which I didn't know that was part of Gloria's character, but okay. And then when they're driving in the car, the little Barbie car, Gloria's singing along to the song, which Sasha didn't do the first time, but this time she starts singing along too, and they have a little smiley moment at each other. So I guess that fixed their relationship. Good for them. So then in the discussion of Barbie's relationship with feminism, we've decided that actually we only care about talking about how Barbie setting up these unrealistic standards and being perfect, is that empowering or not? Like that's the only aspect of the conversation we're interested in, apparently. And so we get, at one point we have Barbie having an existential crisis, where she has like lost a lot of confidence in herself because, you know, she thought Barbies had solved sexism, and then she found out they didn't. And so, you know, that made her feel bad about herself. And also Sasha called her a fascist. That could not have helped. And so now she's just not sure of her ability to do anything. And she makes a comment about how she's not pretty anymore. And Gloria tells her, you know, of course you're pretty. And Barbie says, I'm not Barbie pretty. Which I thought was a good moment. And then they come in with a joke where the narrator, who, from what I recall, we have not heard from since like the beginning of the movie at this point. The narrator just jumps in to say, a note to the movie makers. So we're breaking the fourth wall now. It's very jarring. Yeah, note to the movie makers. If you want your Barbie to say this, you probably shouldn't cast Margot Robbie in the role. And I get the joke. And people in the theater laughed. I may have even laughed a little bit. Again, because the joke is that Hollywood is always casting like stunningly attractive people and trying to pretend like they're ordinary or ugly, right? And that's what they're calling out. But I don't think the movie understood its own point, right? Barbie is perfect. She sets up unrealistic standards for girls and women because she's perfect, and no one can be perfect. And so now our Barbie, the character, is, you know, having to contend with reality for the first time and is finding that she is not perfect. And it doesn't matter that she is still very beautiful. She's not perfect. So she's not good enough. So Margot Robbie is exactly the person you want to cast in your role to say that line. That's the point. But okay. Then beyond that, we have at the end of the movie, Gloria proposes, hey, why don't we have an ordinary Barbie? And this is another one where she's like tripping over her words, like they're turning it into a joke, where she's like, it's an ordinary Barbie, and she didn't have to be the president. She could be the president if she wanted to, but she didn't have to be the president, and she can just be a mom if she wants to be a mom. And then like just like rambles for a while about it. And it's funny to watch America Ferrera kind of ramble nonsense for a while. But it kind of undercuts, if this is supposed to be our ultimate solution to the issue of is Barbie empowering or not, is we should have an ordinary Barbie so that girls feel like, you know, it's also okay to just not be extraordinary. Having her like kind of ramble and make a goof of herself when she's making that point kind of undercuts it. But okay, ordinary Barbie, and I understand why you would think maybe that was a good option, but it kind of betrays a misunderstanding of the Barbie toy line. Like, yes, there are Barbies who are astronauts and presidents and doctors and all that, but there's also like winter fashion Barbie who wears a parka and snow boots. And there is like earring magic Barbie. She has a cool outfit and she likes earrings. And there is RV Barbie. She owns a camper. And there's big sister Barbie with little sister Kelly. Barbie is a sister. Like, there are a lot of Barbies that are ordinary Barbie. You just don't sell a Barbie that is ordinary Barbie. Like, just stark like that, because what's the appeal for me as a little girl to play with Barbie who's just ordinary Barbie? Like, what's the draw there? I can feel empowered by astronaut Barbie, or if that seems like a lot for me, maybe I just play with the Barbie that came with a little cat and a dog, and they have a little pet bed that makes animal noises when you press the buttons. It's not vet Barbie, it's just Barbie that has some pets. Because I, as a little girl, like cats and dogs. So I want my Barbie to have a cat and a dog. Right? Like, that's ordinary Barbie. Right? I get the point. It just seems weird in the context of the Barbie toy line. And the one other thing here is Gloria does have this speech. And it is a very good speech. And you can go online and find like full transcripts of this speech, because it does very much speak to the real struggles that women have, the like double standard for women under patriarchy. You know, it's very much, I think the opening one is something like, you have to be thin, but not too thin, but you can't want to be thin. You have to want to be healthy, but you have to be thin, right? And she talks about, you know, being a mother, but don't talk to your kids about your kids too much. And you gotta be a career woman, but you can't be, you know, can't squash on other people's dreams, and back and forth, and all these like double standards and unfairness of the world. And it's a very good speech. It has nothing to do with anything in this movie. And I think a lot of people are going to get distracted because they're going to hear this speech and they're going to like, wow, this is great, because they relate to it, because they're bringing their own stuff to the movie. But the movie is not bringing anything to this speech on its own, right? Like, we're not discussing the Barbie toy line and how its relationship with feminism at all anymore. And that's not what that speech is supposed to be about. It's Gloria, you know, talking to Barbie. It's in direct response to Barbie's comment about how, she's not Barbie pretty. And the opening line does actually relate to the movie of, how women feel like they can't be ordinary, they have to be extraordinary, but then they're always doing it wrong. And that last part doesn't really, the part that relates to the movie is you can't be ordinary, you have to be extraordinary. But everything else she says thereafter, it has nothing to do, like, we don't see Gloria really experience any issues. We see her briefly at her job. It seems fine. Like, we barely see her interact with anyone there, and she's like one interaction with one coworker. It felt fine. And then beyond that, we really don't see her interact with anyone but her daughter. We briefly see her husband. He seems great. Like, his only personality trait is he's learning to speak. He's a white guy, and he's learning to speak Spanish for his wife and daughter. So, like, we don't see her struggle, and I believe that she has struggles. It would be more impactful if we saw some of that. And then Barbie, I told you Barbie's struggles here is she's lost confidence in herself because she thought that, she was Barbie perfect, and then she found out that actually the big thing that she thought that, Barbies had achieved had not been achieved, and that made her lose confidence. But she has not been subjected to all these other double standards under a patriarchal society because she's never lived in a patriarchal society. She lived in Barbie land, and she was in LA for like half a day. And even there, like, she dealt with a lot of sexual harassment, which was very traumatizing, I'm sure. But, like, she didn't feel pressure to be a mother but not talk about her kids too much, or feel pressure for not being an ambitious career woman. Like, there just was no time for any of that. So the speech ends with Gloria being like, I can't believe a doll is feeling that too. And I'm like, is she feeling that? I think she just feels down about herself because, she didn't solve misogyny and she thought she had, and also because this particular situation that's going on regarding the plot turn. So yeah, I said we would circle back to Ken. Let's circle back to Ken. Ken, in the promotional materials, is sold to us as the ultimate himbo, right? He's super dumb, and he is super dumb in the movie, but only exists to uplift and support Barbie. Ken, in the movie, is a nice guy. The ultimate nice guy of all time, this guy. I'm fairly certain, literally does nothing to support Barbie at any point. He is constantly demanding her attention, but does nothing for her, right? There's an interview with Ryan Gosling where he talks about Ken's best day would be Barbie drops something and he can pick it up and hand it to her and she'll go, thanks, Ken. That doesn't happen in the movie. Nothing like that happens. There's also an interview where he talks about every Ken needs 2 pairs of sunglasses, right? You got a dark pair so Barbie can't see your sadness, and then you wear a mirrored pair on top of it so Barbie can see herself and, like, if she needs to fix her makeup or something. He does wear 2 sunglasses in the film, 2 pairs at the same time. They're both dark sunglasses, and he's not hiding his sadness from Barbie in a, oh, I don't want her upset her, or I feel like my problems are less important than whatever Barbie's got going on, so I don't want her to know that I'm sad, or whatever, anything like that. It's, I was just deliberately cruel to her, and I don't want her to know that I feel a little bit upset about being that mean. Like, I want her to think that I am cruel. And just for his own ends, like, he was just being cruel to be cruel, not like, it's not like I'm doing it for your own good kind of thing. It was, I'm doing it because I'm mad at you and I want you to hurt. Yeah. There's a Ken who gets another Ken who gets our Ken an ice cream. Ken never gets Barbie an ice cream. Like, he doesn't even, that small. He doesn't do anything to support her. And you might be thinking, well, he went to the real world with her, right? Like his real Sam and Frodo moment, right? No. He did not go to the real world for Barbie. Barbie was going to the real world, like they were having a little sending off party. And Ken said to another Ken, like, hey, you know, she wanted me to go. Like, she asked me to go with her. And I was like, nah, girl, I'm too cool for that. And the other Ken's like, totally calls him out on it. Like, I bet you're lying. You know, I bet you're scared. You're too scared to go to the real world. And I bet she doesn't even want you to go with her. And that's why Ken sneaks in her car. Not because he wants to support Barbie, but because he's got to show up this other Ken. And we know that for a fact, because when Barbie tries to send him back, he's like, no, don't make me go back. Like, I'll be so embarrassed in front of Ken. It's not about Barbie. And then when they get to the real world, like I said, Mattel was after Barbie. So at one point, she actually agrees to go with them. At this point, like, I guess all the Barbies are aware of Mattel, and she just assumes that they have good intentions. So she agrees to go with them, and Ken they separated, and, you know, he now sees her getting loaded up in these cars, and he, like, wonders out loud, like, should I maybe go back her up, you know, and make sure she's okay? Nah, she's fine. I'm sure she's fine. It's Mattel. It's fine. I'm going to go do my own thing. And abandons her as she's getting loaded up into these shady black SUVs, so that he can go back to Barbie Land without her, without communicating to her that that's what he's doing. And admittedly, Barbie also goes back to Barbie Land without communicating to Ken, but she was also on the run from these guys, Mattel guys, who were now trying to kidnap her. And she's also, at this point, had a conversation with them and knows that they are not out for Ken. So it seems like he's probably safe for the moment, and she's going to go into hiding. Ken, however, has reason to believe that she might be in danger, and instead just decides to go back to Barbie Land without her. And the reason that he is so eager to get back to Barbie Land is because he wants to introduce patriarchy to Barbie Land. So yeah, that plot turn when Barbie, Sasha, and Gloria get to Barbie Land is that the Kens have taken over. They have brainwashed and enslaved all the Barbies. So all the Barbies now are just like total, like the peak bimbo who think Ken is the smartest, best person in the world and has no desire in life besides making Ken happy. So yeah. And then Ken has also stolen Barbie's house and turned it into Ken's Mojo Dojo Casa house. And the Kens have taken over every position in society because, as I said, the Barbies are now just like bimbos who do nothing but serve Kens. And so Barbie, her two human friends, and then a small collection of like reject Barbies, like very discontinued or that was a weird choice kind of Barbies, including the actual weird Barbie, have to team up to unbrainwash the Barbies and to stop Ken's plan before he can make his takeover of Barbie Land permanent. And so if you're listening to that and you're thinking that sounds like a lot of fun, I agree with you. It does sound like a lot of fun. And if that's the movie that they wanted to tell, just a fun, goofy movie about Ken bringing patriarchy to Barbie Land, and Barbie and her ragtag group of weird Barbies had to stop him, and it was just a fun, lighthearted movie that didn't take itself too seriously, I would have been on board for that. I would have had a good time. No complaints. The problem is that's not the movie that we're watching. We had half of one movie about a mother and daughter and about the complex relationship between Barbie and feminism. And now we have the other half is this other movie goofy movie about Ken and patriarchy, which just like the first half of the movie did not get to really have proper payoff for everything it was setting up. Now this movie does not get enough time to set up everything it's going to try to pay off eventually. Like the brainwashing of the Barbies, how was Ken doing that? No idea. I don't know how he accomplished that at all. then the Barbies become unbrainwashed when they hear Gloria's speech about the, complex pressures of womanhood. Why does that unbrainwash them? I don't know. Maybe I could guess better if I knew how they got brainwashed in the first place. And it doesn't really make sense too, because this is still like a silly parody version of patriarchy. Like, this is not the real world and these complex systems and all that. It's silly parody patriarchy where all the kins are like the most stereotypical nice guy loser that you could ever imagine, and all the Barbies have been turned into bimbos. So I don't understand why talking to them about the complex way that women are impressed in the real world would speak to their experiences in a way that unbrainwash them. I don't know. It's weird. Then like the plot that Ken has to permanently take over Barbie Land is their Kens are going to have a vote on the Constitution and change it. And so the Barbies plan, they brainwash on the Barbies, and then they get a plan together to distract the Kens so they don't show up for the vote. And instead, all the Barbies show up for the vote, and they vote to, they vote to fix things? Like, I thought this was a vote to change the Constitution to make it to kingdom. So wouldn't the Barbies be voting to keep the Constitution the same? And if the Barbies are voting to keep the Constitution the same and keep things the same, why would that fix what has gone wrong? Like, I'm not clear on that. And I could come up with like an explanation of why it works that way. But the point is, I wouldn't have to if the movie had more time, if it had like a full hour and a half movie length to explain some of this stuff to me. It does not have enough time for everything. Another thing that I said is that if you're going to do this movie, it does need to be a silly movie that doesn't take itself too seriously. But the first half of this movie was trying to say something about feminism. So of course the back half is going to continue to try to say something about feminism. And if you are bringing seriousness into your movie, like your goofy movie could make some jokes at the expense of patriarchy. You could poke a little fun. You can make a little point here or there. But if you're trying to make if you're trying to seriously say something in your movie, then I have to kind of take your movie seriously to a certain extent. And then things start to fall apart because, and I know how this sounds, but in Barbie Land, the Kens are oppressed. Like, that's true. And it's like it is a fact. And I know a lot of people are screaming it, like a lot of people are screaming it in bad faith, but it is something that's true, right? Like, the Barbies hold all positions of power, and the Kens are beach. Like, that's Ken's job. To my understanding, it's every Ken's job. Their job is just beach. And at one point, Barbie, as she's giving the tour of all the dream houses, she is asked, where do the Kens live? And she's like, oh, I don't know. So, like, I guess all the Kens are unhoused in Barbie Land? Like, they are oppressed. Like, that's the thing that's happening. And in a silly, goofy movie about Ken bringing patriarchy to Barbie Land, that's fine. You don't have to take it too seriously. But if you're trying to seriously say something, I have to start asking questions. And then the movie, when it ends and they've stopped the plot, the Kens ask President Barbie, like, hey, can we have one Ken on the Supreme Court? And President Barbie tells them no, maybe some lower circuit courts. Which, in a silly, goofy movie that doesn't take itself too seriously, is a funny joke, and I did laugh at it. But in a movie where you're trying to say something about feminism, to be like, have the narrator jump in here and say, pretty soon, that Kens will have as much power as Barbie Land as women have in the real world. It feels weird. Like you understand that that's not like a good thing. That's not an ideal system. Are we criticizing Barbie Land for also being bad? That seems like a weird choice. That's not really the tone I was getting here. And what makes this all worse is, so when the Barbies have stopped the Kens plan, they've turned things back to normal, Kens find out about it, and our main Ken, I guess he's probably stereotypical Ken, to go with stereotypical Barbie, he is upset, and he runs off crying, and he like goes to get in Barbie's bed and is like crying in her bed, which, I don't know, that's kind of a weird vibe. But like, yeah, he's crying, and Barbie has to go talk to him and like comfort him because he's sad about his plan to brainwash and enslave the Barbies and steal Barbie's house and take over her society fell through. Barbie's gotta comfort him on that. And he is never held accountable for his actions. He never apologizes for his actions. He never admits that he did anything wrong. The closest we get to admission of wrongdoing is him being like, well, whatever, I didn't like patriarchy anyways, because when I found out there was less horses than I was originally led to believe. And also the mini fridge was stupid, and I think he says a couple other things like to that tune. And at best, it's someone like kind of roundabout admitting they're wrong. Like they won't admit that they were wrong, but like for trying to implying it by implying that their idea maybe wasn't, there were problems with it. Which that does not fly for me, Ken. If you have brainwashed and enslaved people, I need you to go ahead and full on state that that was a bad thing to do, that you should not have done it. What the fuck? And then there's also the possibility that this whole thing is like a child throwing a tantrum, like, you're taking patriarchy away from me? Well, fine, I didn't like patriarchy anyways. Right? Like, there is no good option here. So Ken does not have to apologize for anything he did, but Barbie apologizes to Ken for taking him for granted. And she says that maybe not every night had to be girls' night. How are you taking someone for granted if they've literally never done anything for you besides demand your attention? Like, Ken does not do anything for Barbie. This is not like he's not been a good friend to her and she's not, reciprocating. He's just using her for her, like, he wants her attention, is just using her to try to get that attention. Does not give anything back to the relationship. And also, like, I didn't even get the feeling that she liked Ken that much, right? Like, she doesn't owe him her time. But apparently, according to this movie, Barbie does owe him that. So, just to be clear, this movie is saying that Barbie Land as a whole does not owe Kens any sort of institutional power. But Barbie, as an individual woman, does owe Ken, a man, her time and attention, regardless of how she feels about it and what she wants to do. She is allowed to say that she doesn't want to date him. Like, that is, she does put her foot down there. That's one boundary she's allowed, right? She doesn't have to date someone that she does not have any interest in. Girl power. Yay, feminism. So that happens, and then after that is where we have the joke about the Supreme Court, and that's also where Gloria proposes to her boss. The Mattel executives are here right now. Like I said, they don't do much. They're just kind of there. So she proposes the ordinary Barbie thing, and then everyone's like, okay, how does Barbie's story end? And then the Mattel CEO is like, well, she's in love with Ken, which felt weird. Like, I felt like we just covered this. Like, we just said that, no, that's the boundary that she's allowed to have. She's allowed to say that she doesn't want to be in a relationship with Ken. But, and I mean, like, internal logic, the CEO, I don't think, heard that part of the conversation. Like, they were in the dream house. I'm not clear. Like, the dream house is open, so it's possible that he overheard it, but it's possible he didn't overhear that part of the conversation, I guess. But it's still a weird choice from, like, the movie standpoint. Anyways, it's not that big of a deal. It just kind of confused me. Anyways, then the ghost of Ruth Handler, the creator of Barbie, walks up, which sounds really abrupt, I know. She was actually in the movie a little bit earlier, and it fits in with the tone fine. Like, it was not weird at all when I was watching it. So, Ruth Handler's ghost comes up, and she and Barbie go for a walk, and they have a talk about motherhood, because, you know, Ruth is the creator of Barbie, so she's sort of like Barbie's mother, especially since she did create Barbie and name her after her own daughter, Barbara Handler. And then they kind of have a talk about, you know, what it means to be human. And it would be a really great conversation to wrap up the first movie that this movie was telling. Like, Ruth has this one line where she tells Barbie that mothers stand still so daughters can look back and see how far they've come. So in a movie where we had, like, Sasha as a daughter learn to make space for the fact that her mother, Gloria, that for what Sasha is, like, not enough, was for Gloria more than she ever really thought that she would be able to get. And learning to honor that and the importance of that. While Gloria as a mother is still encouraging Sasha, no, you should ask for more. And you should demand from the world everything that you deserve. Like, in that movie, this line would be very powerful. But in this version of the movie, where their conflict is solved with, actually, you're pretty cool, Mom, and some sing-along to the radio together, the line only has the impact that the viewer is bringing with it. It's just like Gloria's speech earlier about, you know, the difficulties with being a woman. Like, the only power that we have to this line and this part is what the viewers are providing, because the movie doesn't provide for it. Because the movie was busy being two movies at once. So Barbie does choose to become human. And then we have a scene with her in the real world. She's in the car with Gloria and Sasha and the husband who does nothing. He's the real Ken of the movie. And they're all encouraging her. So she gets out of the car, and when she steps out, we get a close-up of her, like, her shoe. And we see she's wearing a pink Birkenstock. So, like, way back in the reading of the movie, you would have seen this in the trailer. The weird Barbie offers her a choice between a pink heel, like, it's Matrix parody, right? Pink heel, go back to everything the way that it was, or you can have this Birkenstock and find out the truth. And so now Barbie is wearing a pink Birkenstock. So it's, you know, symbolic of being, you know, the fact that she's become human now, but it's still pink. It's the same color pink as that heel, even, to show that she is still kind of retained herself. So that is a good visual. I like that. So she walks into this building, and she goes up to the receptionist, and she says, "My name's Barbara Handler, and I'm here to see my gynecologist." So the beat the movie is going to end on is Barbie is a real girl now because she has a vagina. And I get the joke, right? We had Barbie earlier in the movie tell those construction workers, "I don't have a vagina," because it was a joke about her being a doll. and now she's a real human, and so she has all the real human body parts, like she's got flat feet and she's got a vagina, and so at any other point in the movie the joke would have worked fine. But when you're ending the movie with that joke, the implication is that having a vagina is what makes Barbie a real girl, which is just incredibly transphobic and misogynistic. And that's what we want to end on. Cool. So I struggled with this review in that, like, in with making it at all, right? As someone who considers herself a feminist, making a negative review of the Barbie movie, first of all, there's just the obvious concern of all the people who are negatively reviewing the movie in very bad faith, the people who are complaining about, feminist woke agenda and complaining about how the movie is too mean to Ken. The movie is not mean enough to Ken. We need to hold that man accountable. And all that. And like, you don't want to come out here and be like, yeah, I didn't like the Barbie movie, and have people think that that's what you mean. Like you're agreeing with those people. Because I don't agree with them. I think their criticisms are incredibly bad faith. But like, I don't want to not share my opinion just because I'm afraid some people that will think I agree with them, right? Like, I don't want to have to stay silent just because I'm afraid some people will take it wrong. And then there's also a concern of knowing that movies made for women, very pink, hyper feminine movies, especially like this one, and movies made by women, or really anyone who's not a man, are always going to get a greater deal of scrutiny. And some of that is just incidental in the fact that if there are 10 movies made for men and one movie made for women, then of course the one movie made for women is going to be different. It's going to catch your attention, so more people are going to be talking about it. And then also, it doesn't get the luxury of, if there's 10 movies made for men and one shitty, that's fine. There might be 9 other good ones in there. But if there's one movie made for women, this is our only chance to get it right. So it has to be everything to everyone. And that is not fair. And further, there are people who are going to criticize it more harshly just because we do live in a patriarchal society, and we do have all these unconscious biases. So you might not even realize that you're judging it more harshly than you would have judged an equivalent movie that was geared towards men. But it's still there, right? And I have no way of knowing if that's what I'm doing. It's an unconscious bias, right? Like, if you have an unconscious bias, by definition, you don't know it. But I can't stay silent about anything that I might have an unconscious bias on that's making me, judge it unfairly, because then I would never say anything, right? And there's also the question of, like, you don't want to be too harsh on a movie. We don't want another, like, fucking Steven Universe situation here. But there is also a big difference between this movie and Steven Universe, in that, like, Steven Universe, or, an equivalent show, but that one's an easy one. While it definitely had a lot of women characters, and it definitely had a lot of queer characters too, and so it, just by nature of them being there, ended up saying a lot about those things. The show never set out to be like, this is a show about womanhood, right? It had other things that it was focusing on, and the things that it was saying about womanhood were just happening as when it made sense in the context of the show. Whereas the Barbie movie very much did set out to be a movie that says something about feminism and about patriarchy, And so if we go easy on it and like try to be like, oh, well, it's okay if it wasn't perfect, when that is the core message, just because it was, geared towards women, it was made by a woman, like, isn't that also sexism, right? Like, I don't want to judge it too harshly because I have an unconscious bias, but I also don't want to overcorrect and refuse to judge it because it's made by a woman, so therefore it can't be criticized, right? I want it to get better, but I don't want to shit on it. And of course, on top of all of this, there is the very, practical consideration that pink feminine movies do not get made very often because studios don't have faith in them, right? And I'm sure the only reason this one was made was because Barbie ties so directly to a toy line, and so it serves a bit more of a commercial purpose than your average pink girly movie would, right? And if the movie doesn't do well, then there's a very real chance that the message is not going to be, we just weren't satisfied, we would like you to do better. The message is going to be, we don't like this kind of movie. You were right. Don't make this. Nobody wants to see it. And as I made very clear at the beginning, that's not what I want. I want lots of this kind of movie. So it's hard to know what the right thing to do is and how negative can you be in your criticism and still be fair. What's the reasonable line of criticism that, challenges the issues that I see in this movie without holding it up to an unfair standard because it's a pink girl movie. And so I think ultimately, though, the most damning criticism that I can say of this movie is my struggles here with whether or not I should make negative criticism of it say a lot more about the complex relationship that Barbie has with feminism than anything the movie itself has to say.